10 days.
10 days.
10 days.
10 days.
10 days.
10 days.
10 Days of Trans Demands is an annual campaign from the ACLU of Missouri's Trans Justice Program. In 2020, with the disproportionate murders of trans women, some of whom may have had to do sex work to survive, it's clear that trans justice is about more than just health insurance and pronouns. It is time to face the facts and do the work to protect those in our community who engage in the essential labor of sex work.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Maxie Glamour, and I am going to be tonight's host as we go through this wonderful sexual journey about sex work decriminalization. But before we get to anything started, I want to acknowledge the fact that we are on stolen land. And when we look at policies and the government that is governing this country, acknowledge the fact that we need to put into context the fact that this land is stolen. So I just want to take a second to put into thought the indigenous populations that were here first that are still here. And you can check out this link below, nativeland.ca, and you can check out what native peoples were on the place that you were living. I know in St. Louis, we have the Kickapoo and the Cahokia. Just gonna let you do that for a second. Wonderful. Now that we have that, I would love to go into the goals and what people are going to learn today. So first, we're going to dive deep into the history of the Mojo Justice Coalition. We're going to give you the tools to destigmatize sex work in your lives, help educate you on this topic to take the learning to other organizations and plug in more for 2021. Throughout the night, participants will learn who is doing this work now locally and nationally, what has been accomplished so far with the Missouri campaigns as far as the report and the coalition, how to take sex work advocacy from a cultural idea to a policy and community reality. And we're also going to look at where Missouri fits in the national effort to change the tide on the issue. So starting off, I want to bring up two very special guests. First up, we have Indigo, and Indigo is the director of the St. Louis chapter of SWAP, and that's a sex worker outreach project. Indigo spearheaded the region's first sex worker allyship 101 event and won a grant last summer to support a street outreach program for sex workers and injection drug users, as well as a GED preparation lending library. Next up, we have Jalissa. And Jalissa is an herbalist and sex worker living in Kansas City, Missouri, and is a co-leader of the Mojo Justice Coalition. Hi, Jalissa. Hi, Indigo. But before we get that, we're going to watch a quick little video.
One thing that I wish people in general knew about sex work and the sex trafficking hysteria is that criminalizing something does not make it go away. We've seen it time and time again play out that criminalizing people for what they gotta do to survive in this really upside down world that we're living in right now does not work. What people need is they need services, they need support, they need the tools and resources to flourish. This work can't wait because sex workers are being killed by stigma, because we can't seek support and we can't seek services that we need to survive because of our work and the stigma surrounding it.
Institutions, city governments, and community members fulfilling these 10 demands
will ensure a Missouri that is better and safer for all sex workers.
Yes! 10 days, we're here.
Yeah.
Hello, Maxie.
Hi, how are you, Jalissa? How are you, Indigo?
Oh, so excited to be here and so excited for day 10. We made it. We're here.
Day 10 of a lifetime commitment of liberating sex workers. So, can you guys tell me just a little bit about Mojo Justice, where it started, and what have we accomplished so far?
So the first kind of seeds of Mojo Justice were planted last year on December 17th, 2019, during the Sex Worker Allyship 101 event put on by SWAP St. Louis. And Jay Marie, who is connected with the ACLU, helped hook us up with space for that event. And that really got us talking about sex work organizing and the need for sex worker liberation and sex worker voices to be heard in Missouri. For both of us as trans people of color, and specifically for Jay Marie as a Black trans person, we see the need for Black trans folks to be celebrated and to be honored and supported, not just in death, but in life. And for these intersecting communities of sex workers and Black trans community, Black trans folks are overrepresented within sex working communities. And this is a really big part of liberating folks in all sorts of intersecting struggles. Sex work really touches everybody. And so that developed into the two of us talking about sex work organizing and pulling in folks from all over the state to getting involved. And Jalissa was one of our fantastic Kansas City folks who came along board and jumped right into the organizing. And since then COVID's hit, we pivoted not only to developing ourselves within, but sharing the love and support out into our communities. So Jay Marie's Sweet and Fund, SWAP St. Louis, we moved about 4,000 within our communities, as well as supplies and care. And Sweet and Fund distributed, I think, 30K. And throughout the process of developing the coalition, we've also been moving sex workers money throughout the process, as we've also turned outward to deliver a lot of great content for public education and awareness. And Jalissa, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we've had monthly education events. We also have a monthly meeting for people to tune into. And you can find the information on this at social media at Mojo Justice by checking out our website, mojojustice.com. And I joined the coalition in the spring as a sex worker who was not out in Missouri looking for community. And the survey that we conducted over the summer is amazing. You can see the efforts of it in our report that we put out on our website. And so all of the community of sex workers, rural sex workers in Missouri and southern Missouri, we have a lot of focus on St. Louis and Kansas City, but we do have a recently formed caucus that you can get in touch with us to join, because we're looking to connect with you as well too. And we know that your stories matter. Specifically in Kansas City, we want to give some love to Operation Liberation that's joined us this week here, an amazing Black-led organization for Black liberation that also has a bail fund here in Kansas City, as well as the harm reduction group Confluence, Harm Reduction KC, that has also been collaborating us in Kansas City too to help sex workers and their communities.
Y'all out here really doing the work.
I want to shout out a few St. Louis organizations as well that have helped support the coalition as we develop, not only the ACLU providing so much support and help with funding, SWAP St. Louis, as well as the Metro Trans Umbrella Group, and Lysair and folks out there, the Tea with Dr. Lori Punch, Flower Boy, the Missouri HIV Justice Coalition. So many folks and so many organizations have really been the village of raising this fledgling coalition as we continue to grow in the region.
Yeah, it's so like wonderful hearing how much work and how much like people are coming together for this sexiness just to happen. You know, inch by inch, we're making this country a little bit more sexier just by destigmatizing sex work. Now, I heard rumors that you're trying to expand to all over the state to get every little inch of it. How are people able to get in contact and learn a little bit more about what they can do about sex workers in St. Louis and in Missouri?
Yeah, so fantastic question. And the answer is our microsite, mojojustice.com. It is the place to be to find out about our upcoming events, the things that we've been working on, the report. Huge shout out to the report. This fantastic report is going to be hosted on mojojustice.com. So you can read it, flip through it, and get connected by taking the pleasure pledge, affirming and committing to self-pleasure, paid pleasure, and trans pleasure. And by taking that pledge, you can stay in touch with all the exciting developments that we will be working on and get involved with the work that we're doing in the future.
Yeah, and I'll add that you don't have to be a sex worker to get involved too, that sex workers are in all communities. They have so much to teach about mutual aid. They're in organizing communities and they're all over the place. So you don't have to be a sex worker to get involved and to care about sex workers' rights and liberation. There's plenty of resources on the website if you are new to what is the idea of sex workers, why uplift sex worker voices. You can find all of that information in our report with a really awesome Missouri context for everyone who's tuning in here in Missouri.
That's so awesome. It really takes everyone to get liberation, not just one person or a couple people. You know, as I have a little bit more time with you, I want to know one thing. You're talking about this report, and I wonder if briefly you can just tell me what the report is about, where did you get the findings, and why people should read it.
So the report was a kind of all-year effort that the ACLU and Mojo Justice Coalition worked on. We co-developed a survey with sex workers in our communities to ask the sex working community what's going on in Missouri. So what are the great parts of being a sex worker in Missouri? What are the things that are challenges and struggles that we face? As well as we took a lot of data on who is doing the sex work, race, gender, education level, children in the household, et cetera, and trying to figure out, you know, who's in our community and what are the issues that we are facing, not because we didn't know, like we already knew that stigma was killing us. We already knew that the criminalization of our work was killing us, that not having enough resources in our communities was killing us, and transphobia is killing us, racism is killing us. But to have the voices of 152 sex workers in Missouri to be collected and reported, and to have this data just showing and crystallizing our experience is going to be the foundation of future advocacy and work in our state. Because we got to take account of what's going on here first before we can try to show up and change everything. So I highly recommend everybody reading the report, whether you're in Missouri and you got to know what's going on here, or even if you're all over the country, as we will continue to discuss throughout the hour. Like Missouri has been ground zero for issues that impact sex workers nationwide. Like FOSTA SESTA was introduced by Missouri's very own Ann Wagner. Earn It, co-introduced by Josh Hawley, another Missouri senator. So Folks really need to keep their eye on us and be, in community as we collectively throughout the country work to decriminalize sex work.
Yeah, a lot of people don't see it as like a state by state issue, but it's really just an international issue, the way that there's so much stigma surrounding sex work and the cross points of being a sex worker and being Black and trans in this country. It seems as though the cards are pretty much set up against Black trans sex workers. I know that tonight's event is a culmination of the 10 days of trans demands, and sex work decriminalization is on the top of those demands that we need for trans liberation. So I want to thank you all for joining me. I'm going to chat with you a little bit later, but we have a little video for everyone at home to watch.
Thank you, Maxie.
The Missouri Mojo Justice Coalition is here to make it known. All sex workers deserve safety and protection.
Our 10 demands for 2020 and beyond are:
decriminalize sex work. Affirm publicly that sex work is work.
Defer to the wisdom and leadership of sex workers. Confront sex work stigma in your everyday life.
End all law enforcement harassment. Reject the conflation of sex work with sex trafficking. Urgently support Black, Indigenous, and trans sex worker survival.
improve health outcomes by adopting policies that affirm sex work as labor, oppose laws that endanger sex workers, commit to meeting all sex workers' access needs.
Fulfilling these 10 demands will ensure a Missouri that is better and safer for all sex workers.
It is time to face the facts and do the work to protect those in our community who engage in the essential labor of sex work.
These videos are everything. I just want to give it up to you and your team, Jamie, for making this possible. For all of you at home, I want to introduce you to my good friend, colleague, and sometimes a pretty great mentor. For the most part, you're a pretty great mentor. So, J-Marie is an organizer and a musician who lives a life designed to help our world ascend beyond gendered and racialized norms. Their latest passions include building a statewide team to decriminalize sex work in Kansas City, in St. Louis, and all over the state, teaching youth about bikes as freedom tools in St. Louis City, and putting finishing touches on their first studio album as J-Marie's Holy. That album is going to be called 5/3, More Than Magic. They are also the co-leader of the statewide Mojo Justice Coalition. J-Marie Hill is an organizer and a musician who lives a life designed to help our world ascend beyond. I'm going to put this in there twice. But hi, J-Marie, how are you?
Hello, thank you for the welcome and the double welcome. I appreciate it. I'm really just here to support, a little bit even more of what Indigo and Jalissa were saying. They're my hearts, they are my two co-leads, and I definitely could not have done any of this without them. ACLU has been really helpful, but it's nothing like having sex workers ready to throw down. You know what I'm saying? It's not theoretical. It's not, a couple hashtags here and a headline there. This is real life for people, right? And so I just feel so grateful to have them in the mix and to be following them. It's a tough intro, but to follow. But I'm gonna do my best here.
Yeah. So tell me, what brings you to this fight? You got these boxing gloves on. You're ready to brawl.
Yo, ready. I even got my Black trans trainer in KC, keeping me tight. So, what brings me to this fight is, Indigo kind of spoke to it. I essentially know that many of us see the phrase or hear the ideas Black trans lives matter, right? But many of us don't actually know how to make sure that people feel that while they're alive. And one of the ways that I want to make sure people do feel that is that we don't stumble when it comes to talking about what people have to do to stay alive, right? And I find that a lot of people stumble when talking about sex work. It's a topic we don't get to hear about. It's a topic that we are told is bad and that you're only supposed to do it if you're desperate, right? And it's like, well, some people do it and are good at sex regardless of other people's desperation, right? So to giving props where they're due and just making sure that we don't stumble and have anything that people can use against us as a population, as a community, because while we're building power, we have to be able to be honest about our conditions and our state of being. And that means we got to be honest about what people are doing to get that bag. Okay.
Get that bag. I like how you said it's not stumbling when we're talking about sex work decriminalization. I have like a little embarrassing story. Not story, just I stumble when I talk about anything, everything. What I want from the grocery store, I'm stumbling. So I really appreciate Mojo Justice being here and like equipping people with the language and tools how to better articulate, the needs of sex workers and trans folk in general.
I'm happy to do it. And I saw it as an opening. We did have some support from National ACLU. They've been in support of decriminalization since 1973. So we know that the conditions aren't always right to push those policies, right? But to have a stance out is really a big deal. And so, this Missouri is the show me state. So I was like, ACLU got a position on this, but we don't have a campaign. I got to show the people, So that's how we got here.
Yeah, and you've been showing people. It's really crazy just seeing, being on the inside and the outside of Mojo Justice Coalition and seeing throughout the pandemic, because most of this has been during the pandemic, and getting together, getting out there, it's been hard. People are waning in capacity, and just props to you. And really, I would love to maybe get a little bit of insight of how this connects nationally, and some figureheads that are leading this fight outside of Missouri, outside of St. Louis and Kansas City.
Yeah, I'm still learning myself in a way, because what I have learned is from the people who have come before me, they have given me permission. They've given me more than enough information to step in and say, I think I know what's going on. I think I can find some statistics to root this conversation. But the real deal is I know enough people individually. And as a movement, I've heard people say too many times, Black trans lives matter, for me to say that even again and not show it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think nationally, there has been a lot of learning that I've done from people in DC, from people, some folks in the Bay Area in California, where I'm from. Gotta holler at that. But I love Missouri. We're working it out here. But I have seen people kind of on the coastal, tip, do their best to get their city councils in order, to have their prosecutors, do what they need to do as far as promising it, but also getting their law enforcement teams to follow through with the promise. There's been some work in Seattle. Almost every major city has a decriminalization either effort, whether it's a SWAP chapter, as Indigo mentioned, being a part of Sex Work Outreach Project, or an organization like ours where we're kind of building it from scratch with local coalition partners. You never know what's going to be perfect for that location, but I think DC is in New York. New York actually just had a win in their campaign today. City Council, I believe, passed a piece of legislation. So there's progress being made everywhere, but what I find is that many people don't think about St. Louis, right? Many people don't think about us in this work that we are engaged in. I've said a lot throughout this campaign, the last time people thought about St. Louis might have been Ferguson. Many people don't even realize that Ferguson is St. Louis, right? It's a small municipality in the county, but it is St. Louis. And so I wanted to make sure that while St. Louis is often on the map for really difficult things that maybe the whole nation does learn from, I wanted to make sure that we were on the map for something powerful and something that the nation can still learn from, and they can watch our unapologetic commitment to not only Black folks, to all these people on our merch that we got. It's a commitment, and so I just wanted to make sure people could see us as a part of the national landscape. And while we don't have a large, hundreds of people in the state, we're building towards that, right? And when it's time to execute, whether it's a Kansas City bill or a St. Louis bill, the people will know, and we will have them. People have taken the Pleasure Pledge during 10 days, which you can go to mojojustice.com and take right now. We definitely are just eager to have people in the movement and to see how St. Louis already does fit in the national landscape. And you being in conversation with Miss Kate, Miss Ashley Wright and Kate Diadamo right now in a moment, I'm excited for that to be a part of what people see, because if we don't bring them here, they may not ever know. So excited to bring them on.
Yeah, totally. And these are people that are doing this work. A term that I just learned this year is pleasure activism, just liberation, but making it feel good at the same time. And,
right.
Really these people are tapped in. Would you want to introduce them so the audience members at home can know who they are, know their names and their stories?
Absolutely. Shout out to pleasure activism. Shout out to Adrienne Marie Brown, who has taught many of us about, emergent strategy and pleasure activism and these things that we think are not our birthright, right? This idea that, activism or building a new world should feel bad, right? It's like, actually, the world I'm building, I want pleasure. I want dancing. I want fun. I want sex, right? I want sex workers. So we got to make sure that we can actually take care of folks as we are even building that new world. And so the people who are here tonight to show us how they are already living in that new world, preparing us for it, two really incredible workers. One is Miss Ashley Wright. I'll read her bio now. Miss Ashley Wright is the leading African-American voice on breastfeeding and natural parenting on Instagram and Facebook. She defines herself as a badass, breastfeeding, baby-wearing, attachment parenting, pole dancing, yogi mama who inspires and motivates men, women, and families her way. She's been featured on Ellen, BuzzFeed, The Doctors, BET, Discovery Channel, Women's Health, and more. And as a queer woman and sex worker, she utilizes her platform as a space that checks biases while also providing us perspective shift on how we define sexuality or sensuality in motherhood. Her message to all parents and individuals is it's okay to be 100% committed to your child or your children and your loved ones. In doing so, make sure that you take the time to give to yourself. Get your hair done, go to a game, practice yoga, take the Zumba class, because if you don't continue to give to yourself, you compromise the quality of care for others, right? And we know that if you're pouring from an empty cup, what you're pouring is not going to be very filling, okay? So shout out to Ms. Ashley Wright. Cannot wait to have her on here in a moment. And then we have also Kate Diadamo, who is a federal, just a really incredible person. Reading her bio, Kate Diadamo uses she and they pronouns, as a queer, mixed race, hard femme, and partner at Reframe Health and Justice, a QTPOC or queer trans people of color collective working at the intersections of anti-violence, harm reduction, and upending criminal legal systems. Kate draws on a background of community organizing with SWAP New York City, policy advocacy at the Sex Workers Project, and rewriting narratives under the broad red umbrella of sex worker rights. She was a co-founder of Persist Health Project and Survivors Against SESTA, and currently does national and federal advocacy in support of sex workers' health and wellness, and believes that change comes in the form of community empowerment and statement earrings, bitch, okay? Get ready. Y'all get up. You know what I'm saying? Get up out of your seats wherever you're watching from. I'm gonna leave y'all to it, because this is about to be a powerful conversation, and I'm just so grateful for y'all being here. ACLU Missouri, the Mojo Justice Coalition, we're very grateful for the conversation that you will bring, and excited to be in community and relationship with you all moving forward as well. So welcome. Have a good conversation.
Yeah. Thanks, J. Marie. Hi, how are you?
Hello. Hi. Look, I'm live. This is exciting.
Yeah, get hype. Get hype.
Talk about all the things.
We're talking about hoes and hoe justice.
Wop.
So I'm so excited. Like, I know we've been practicing this, we've been talking and like really getting into this, and like this is it. We're here. We're like doing this. So it's just great to see you and the people at home to see what we've been doing. So I just want to know, like, this is some crazy work, decriminalizing sex work. How did you get into it? And how did you get into sex work advocacy?
I will hop on that. So as I said, I came from a background of community organizing and working in New York City to build community, bring folks together, do capacity building, peer support, and then really moved into advocacy work because I wanted to deal with root causes. And so I get to work on federal policy now, national policy. But when you come from being a community organizer, it means that you know that there's such a difference between the laws that pass on paper and how that looks on the ground. And so coming from that background means that I get to do advocacy work that is still really reflective of making sure that the way things look at the end are the way that you intended at the beginning.
That's so exciting. I'm over here like, yes, Kate. So let me go ahead and tell you guys how I got into sex work and advocacy in sex work. Is I am a sex worker, and having ventured into that space, I realized that policy and cultural biases were heavy in that space and were projecting violence upon us. And so as I started to organically share and shamelessly share me as a sex worker, I realized that there needs to be more discussion around it, policy change, which I am learning more of how to do, and that sex workers work, and that because we are sex workers, we deserve humanity in that space and respect.
Period. On that, we deserve humanity. And that's the thing, we've had the humanity, just not everyone has seen it. Not everyone has recognized that. Another thing is like the overlapping identities of being trans and being a sex worker. So I would like to know, like, where does supporting trans folk fit into your work and your stories? And either can answer this.
For me, so having friends who are trans people, trans sex worker, I think it's important that I acknowledged, right, and that I recognize that oftentimes trans workers are pushed into sex work because of discrimination against trans people in the workplace, access to jobs, etc. And so when And so in recognizing that, I was able to see like, hey, we need to make a more conscious effort to support this space so that we can destigmatize it, right? And decolonize it so they can have access to the resources that need to make this a safe and supportive space for them.
And I think for me, I've come from queer organizing spaces, but I think the difference is it's not just about recognizing that, you know, trans folks are more likely to rely on informal economies in general, but definitely the sex trade. It's about recognizing what it means to center those stories. And the thing is, when you center a story, you recognize all of the different barriers that exist. And so for me, working from a lens, a gender justice lens, talking about sex worker advocacy and sex worker liberation, and really centering especially folks of trans experience, means that when you're working on policy and laws, you probably get a perspective that you're not necessarily going to get otherwise. And so I think supporting trans leadership, making sure that trans folks have access to what you're coming up with. If you are developing a relationship with a platform that doesn't allow trans workers on its space or doesn't have people seeking trans clients, that isn't going to work. And that's not full liberation. And so, you know, when we talk about sex worker liberation and really utilize a trans lens, it means not just saying, yes, I acknowledge trans folks. It means actually meaningfully integrating those stories and those experiences and those needs into your policy solutions.
Yes, Kate, highlighting their stories. Thank you for saying that, because now it's like, it makes me say to myself, bitch, do better. Do better on your Twitter. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, how can you do that, right? Do it better. So thank you for giving that reminder and that suggestion to us, like putting them in the forefront of that space. Thank you. Sorry, I know you're supposed to say it too, but I just had to give her. I had to give her, be like, you know what? I need that. Teach me.
No, I think we can continue supporting each other all night long. I just want to gas y'all up because I'm just here, like listening and eating this up, like, I'm looking at this bowl, but it's potpourri. It's not food. I'm hungry. So, you know, a lot of people are saying, oh, now's not the time to fight for this. Oh, you know, maybe you shouldn't talk about sex work because it's a little taboo and it's outlawed in most countries. Why should we be loud? Why should we be vocal? Why should we disrupt the status quo when it comes to sex work decriminalization and advocacy for them?
So I think one of the really important things to remember is that being bold about sex workers, about sex work liberation, that's anti-stigma work. And so we're going to talk about advocacy, we're going to talk about policy change, but if you are vocal about supporting sex workers in the spaces that you're in, you are doing work just by doing that. And I think, you know, I come from sex worker spaces, I come from community. And so like sex work has been my issue for a really long time. And, you know, the more advocacy work that I do, because we don't live in a silo and our answers aren't going to come in a silo. But when you're dealing with an issue, so sex work, let me step back. Sex work exists in a space in the nexus of criminalization and economic justice. You are criminalizing people for making sure that they are fed, that their kids are fed, that they have a roof over their head. And a lot of folks access the sex trade because they are not able to access formal forms of resources. And we're talking about jobs, but we're also talking about the social services that a lot of people take for granted or assume are there and assume are good enough, and they are not. And so when you take an issue where the people who are experiencing sex work, who are engaging in sex work, are more likely to be women and femmes of color, to be LGBTQ folks, to be undocumented folks, to be disabled folks, to be folks with a record, to be folks who don't have a formal education, then all of a sudden you're seeing barriers to your solutions that you wouldn't have otherwise. If you have a problem and the person that you're centering is an individual cis white male who is stably housed, you might not realize how inaccessible your answers are. And so when you take a community that is disproportionately impacted by so many different forms of marginalization, you are going to liberate everyone in the process of liberating sex workers.
Hallelujah. Woo, church is ready.
Yes. Listen, she covered it. She covered it in the space of like why it's important to be bold about sex work. So what I'm going to do is just tell you why it's important for me that I am bold about the fact that I'm a sex worker. And it's to it's like you said, it's to get that anti-stigma on there. So initially when I became popular as a parenting mother, as a parenting blogger, right? I'm sorry, a parenting blogger, lifestyle blogger, and the ideas of what was considered acceptable, right? That fall into respectability politics. I knew that as people who had this relationship with me, right, that created these attachments, these connections to me, to then see me and acknowledge me as a sex worker was to then rid of the stigma. It was to say like, oh, wow. Okay, so I like Ashley. I care about her. I care about this woman. I know that she's a good mother. So yeah, I want to support her. So she's a sex worker. So I want to support sex workers to this for her to bring this space, right, to highlight, to shine a light on these things. And it completely is ridding of the idea of what I thought it was or what I think of the people a part of it. And to then say, oh, wow, like you said, practice this humanity, this compassion, this care, this respect to those. And that's why I'm so loud about it. But I'm loud about everything, okay? Like I'm bold and completely unapologetic. So you're going to get these titties, you're going to get this sex work, you're going to get these kids, you're going to get this melanin, and you're going to get all of it, and you're going to respect all of it, okay? Be free or die.
Be free or die. Say that. You know, one thing that I really admire is the fact that you are a sex work liberated worker and a movement leader, and you're also a parent. And I think a lot of people kind of think, oh, sex workers are just, you know, girls that stand on the side of the street for crack, and like there is like sex workers aren't this monolithic thing. You know, they're
Right.
not just one type of people, and like being on Ellen DeGeneres, being able to talk about these issues and like a huge thing. It's like, maybe it shouldn't be shoved in a back corner. Maybe, you know, sex work transcends what you see at your truck stops. Maybe, you know, those people also are just as valuable as the girls that get paid $5,000 a night.
Because it's about centering pleasure. It's about centering pleasure. It don't have shit to do with anything else, right? But also the beautiful thing about it is like we can make money while centering pleasure. We're doing a service to everybody here. Everyone who touches them, we're like, hey, you now deserve to feel good. Especially during a pandemic, you can feel good. That's a revolutionary act within itself. Hey, you can feel good in this moment. Oh, you Black, you can feel good in this moment, right? So as we think about these days, it's like if we center our pleasure, and then you brought up being a parent, oftentimes us in parenting, especially women who have fallen under the oppression of like sexual oppression and suppression, right? We lose sight of ourselves as a sexual, sensual being. As a woman, we just are so busy showing up for everyone and everything else that we forget how the kids freaking got here in the first place, right? So then we start to feel disempowered in that space. And so when I got into sex work, I was trying to say, what does it look like for me to practice self-pleasure, which is one of the Mojo Justice pledges. It was like, I am going to practice and center my pleasure, and to know what it is to also not be contingent upon a partner, relying upon other people to say I'm sexy or I'm beautiful or I feel good. And so then to go into that space, I learned from sex workers, right? Shout out to all the sex workers, that I am a bad motherfucker B. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, right?
Say it.
That I can explore my body with curiosity. I can explore kinks and fetishes in a safe way. I can reach out and then entrust other sex workers to guide me in a healthy, safe space, right? And to see like, oh, these are skilled individuals, and what is it they do that help me be a better woman so I can be a better mother and have a better relationship with everyone around me. So yes, like be bold. I have to be bold about all of that because they're out here changing lives. They're out here changing lives. And I'm out here changing lives. I'm changing my own life.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think I just want to build on that because, you know, so often when we do sex worker advocacy, and I know I've done this, we talk about anti-violence, we talk about criminalization, we talk about stigma, and it's important to talk about all of those things. And, you know, the fact that that is present for people and that's what they want to address is really important to make sure it stays in the conversation. And at the same time, we also can talk about the fact that when you're talking about a sex worker, you're talking about intimate emotional labor. You are talking about a connection that people have. And seriously, shout out to the truck stop girls. Shout out to the people who are tricking for substances. Shout out to the people who, at every single price point, in every single way that people trade sex, you are still providing a moment of intimacy. You are still providing a moment of care for someone. And that's really valuable. And, I could go off on capitalism and how it's all about, hate and femmes and hate and femme labor. But we devalue that every single day. We assume that you shouldn't pay for care. We treat people who offer care labor terribly. And when we're talking about the liberation of people who are providing paid care labor, that's a really important thing. And that's a really valuable thing that our society has completely devalued. And so, yes, we do need to talk about anti-violence. We do need to talk about police violence very seriously and the impact of criminalization on our health and our wellness. But that doesn't have to happen at the expense of remembering that we're talking about people who are offering a really beautiful moment of connection under a lot of different difficult circumstances to a lot of people where that is what they want.
I love it. I'm just sitting here, like, I kind of for a second forgot that I'm hosting this event. I feel like I'm at this lecture and I was like, oh, that's right. Wow.
Yes, I had to catch myself because I was like, girl, and let's talk about how this intertwines with birth. I had to be like, let's just stop. Just hold it, Ashley. It'll turn into a whole something else.
I think that as this is a conversation, there's going to have to be millions and millions of more conversations until we get to where we want. And once we get to where we want, we have to reevaluate, like, is this what we want? Is this what liberation looks like? We made steps, but are we there yet? And so I ever since I was a kid, I've always been obsessed with sex work, like from the Moulin Rouge to like looking at paintings of Toulouse-Lautrec, or when I was like living in the Tenderloin in San Francisco. And my drag parents raised me when I got kicked out of my house, and they were black trans drag parents. And we were in motels, and we got the money from the highway, and like people were leaving the strip club at 6 o'clock in the morning, and like really like understanding like the humanity in that is something that people don't do. And that's why we're here. And like looking at that humanity and like how the government appreciates the humanity and appreciates the autonomy of that, it's almost inexistent. Like when we look at the pandemic, sex workers and strippers were not included in stimulus package. Sex workers, it's hard to stand on the side of the street and get money if people are afraid to get within 6 feet of you. And so when we're looking at how the pandemic has affected sex work and the advocacy of sex work, how would you say that your, support for that has changed, and how have you shifted to put that into context?
So it's me, right? So she's looking like, girl, your turn. Mine is so basic on a like peer-to-peer level, right? And so for me, it was like, girl, it's a pandemic. You better get this OnlyFans popping. Get on your cam, like just do it. Like now is the best time to have the safest space, right? The safest space to sell some ass. Like, and it's so funny because I'm literally, my advocacy is like, just do it. It was like, I don't care if you worked at the bank. Hey, you need to do this too. I've literally told every mother, every person, every individual that I've talked to, why haven't you done this yet? You haven't done that yet. You need to do this. Girl, aren't you? Yeah, it's okay. You'll be a sex worker. You just add it to the list of other things that you are. That's fine. It's okay. Like you said, destigmatizing. It's not a thing, girl. It's not a thing. Go get your coin. It's a pandemic out here in these streets. Feed these babies. It's about the haves and the have-nots. You got it. Go get it. Right? So I am like, and I was like, I also found it in a way to like the advocacy for sex work is like, girl, I have never felt so beautiful, right? I really tell them just like that. I said, literally, people are paying to watch these unpedicured toes. I will put them on here. I said, they ain't been scrubbed. I be out here hipping it, walking barefoot in the grass. I said, I got cracked heels. I said, but they will love you from up and down. I said, and you feel good in that. I was like, and that's sex work, girl. I was like, I ain't have to have nobody touch me if I didn't want to. Go and get it. So I'm telling every mama, every dad, every cousin, like, go do it. You ain't started one yet? You ain't started your page? Go start it. It's easy. It's easy. Go do it. And so that's how my advocacy during the pandemic is like, it's okay to venture and to meet yourself and be curious, this childlike curiosity to explore healthy spaces for you to make money, and in doing so, you're destigmatizing it. And when you're destigmatizing it, the more people are doing it, the more resources that we have access to, right? We can remove remove the shame. We can start making it less violent. So that's how I've been like, hey, I know you want to go out there, but pandemic, go ahead and start your online. Like,
I'm trying to get my grandma to be an online hoe, but she doesn't want to do it. But you know,
listen, I be telling all the older people, I said, listen, there are women on there in the top 1%, wrinkles and all, like 90 years old, getting it.
Yeah.
There's a niche for everything.
There's a niche for everything.
And I think my advocacy, like what Ms. Wright is talking about, is what happened to a lot of folks. The mechanisms changed. The dynamics of the industry all of a sudden changed. It reminded me a lot of when Backpage closed down, honestly, where all of a sudden everything was just kind of destabilized, and you had a lot of people trying to figure out all of a sudden overnight, how are we going to make rent? And so when the pandemic hit, it really doubled down on a lot of those challenges where all of a sudden you had so many people destabilized. And the thing about a lot of sex worker organizing is that a lot of organizers are also sex workers. So when sex workers are hit, you're also talking about the organizers being hit too. And so all of a sudden, when you used to, fund a community meeting and be like, I'll pay for the food this month, it's totally cool, those people are struggling too. And so a lot of my advocacy really shifted to, figuring out our economy and our social services do not work for people in informal labor across the board. Like the gig economy is massive, and we don't have services for gig workers. We don't have services for people who are hustling just across the board for everyone. And so a lot of people all of a sudden were really seeing what sex workers were dealing with every day. So a lot of my advocacy shifted to sitting down with other, gig economy workers, other informal workers, and saying, how are we going to figure out this brand new unemployment insurance system, which isn't rolled out, which the state is making up? How do we figure out how to get people on the benefits that are being expanded to, and then knowing that those benefits are not going to be good? And so I think that it's been a really hard moment. A lot of people are struggling, and that's, that is the understatement of the year. And what I think it did, because I am an internal optimist, is that I think it put sex work into a conversation with a lot of other workers who are struggling, a lot of other people who don't face the same stigma, who don't face the same criminalization, but who do face the same challenges where their work isn't necessarily as easily incorporated into the economy as a lot of other middle class.
Yeah, people just don't really understand the fact that, like, as a stripper that travels the country, I can't do that. For the most part, all these clubs are closed. I can't make that coin. I can't buy my drag children like makeup palettes for Christmas like I do every year because I don't have that. And like, people don't really understand that people in the movement are hoes. We're out here selling what we got so we can make sure we can take care of that community, and it takes all of us. And so I really, before we head out, I just want to ask you both, how would you say that trans justice and sex work are connected? We touched it a little bit, but I want to revisit it because we're here for trans liberation.
Sorry, I think that's me first. We talked about it before. When you are talking about the trans community, you're talking about a lot of different barriers to accessing resources. You're talking about states that, non-discrimination is still a question mark. You can still get fired because you're trans. And even if you do have those protections, maybe you're transitioning and your boss comes up with 1,000 other reasons why it doesn't work. If you're talking about, access to single-sex shelters, we're already seeing trans folks getting kicked out of domestic violence shelters, out of homeless shelters. So the thing about trans justice is that you can't just say we want trans people to live. We want trans people to live well. We want trans people to have a roof over their head, but to also have a pretty damn nice house. And so if we're going to really talk about serious liberation of trans folks, of gender nonconforming folks, of folks that are figuring out their gender, we can't just talk about survival. We have to talk about thriving and actually supporting the mechanisms that allow people to thrive.
that's it, right? Oh no, wait, can anybody hear me? Because my screen is frozen. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we thawed up. Don't worry.
Okay, cool. It paused, and I was like, wait a minute now. No, that's it right there. It's saying not only do they can they survive, but they're allowed to live well, and that's giving them the opportunities, affording the opportunities that we all have, as especially for me who presents very, cis hetero, right? Who presents very hetero. So, I love what I love about this conversation is like I'm listening to Kate, and as she breaks down how policy works and so many different avenues of things that I was ignorant to, right? That I'm so ignorant to, and to see how it's so important to share the intricacies, right? The fabric of what that looks like, right? You can't just say it. It's not just saying it. It's about going deep and saying like, and bringing to light what that looks like, right? Being kicked out of the shelters, going through transition at a workplace. And then like, oh my God, you're right. There's that, right? Oh God, there's that. And like, damn, the least we can do then is at least let them have sex work in peace, right? Like that's the least that we can do, and let them make a good coin off of it too, right? So thank you for that. Like, I really don't have anything else to add to that space, as opposed to just acknowledging that it is all connected. It is all connected. And if it all matters, then we need to make sure that we're showing up in the capacity that provides the sophisticated support to trans people.
I love that. And I have one more question. You brought it up, and I want to dive deeper in it. So when we think about policy and cultural shift, what are the levers that we need to pull to go from a cultural movement to an electoral movement, a justice movement where it is in law?
Yeah,
that's all for you, Kate.
Yeah, policy is just one part of advocacy. Advocacy looks a lot of different ways, and it has to. If you change something in the law, if you add non-discrimination in healthcare to the law, but all your doctors are assholes, like that's not going to work. And so when we talk about advocacy, policy is one piece of that. And when I think about advocacy, what I do is I think about saying, how do you interact with this topic? And how do I meet you where you are and kind of move the needle towards health, towards wellness, towards support, towards liberation? And when I'm talking to policymakers, all I'm doing is saying, all right, let's talk about the way that you intersect with this issue. You are the one that supports criminalization policies. Let's talk about the way that you support policing. And we know that criminalization leads to increased HIV risk, increased STI, increased violence from cops, increased violence from clients, increased stigma and discrimination. All I'm asking you to do is look at the part that you play in the system that we have and stop causing harm. And so when you talk to someone who is a peer of a sex worker, then you're asking them, how do you be a better peer? Talking to a family member, it's how do you support them more? If you're talking to a client, if you're talking to people that consume porn, you're talking about how do you become a good consumer? How do you ethically consume porn or services of the sex trade? And when you're talking to a law enforcement person, talking to a policymaker, you're saying, you have control over this. This is where you touch this issue, and this is where you are uniquely positioned to make change, to make things better. It's all the same thing. It's all about meeting people where they are, honoring their challenges, and moving them forward. And policy isn't any different than that. Staffers are the same as everybody else.
And then we have some questions from the viewers at home. And if any of you have any more questions, type it in. I can't say we're going to get to all of them, but we'll try to get as many as we can. So first off, this comes from Christopher Maxwell. Can you describe trans pleasure more?
I feel completely unqualified to answer that. So, and I'm glad I'm glad that person asked that question. Let's get into it. Teach me something. So, who has the answer?
I'm a gender nonconforming person that identifies as non-binary, and we look at pleasure personally. We think about when we see stories on the news, we see another trans girl got murdered. Another trans girl got kicked out of the bathroom. Another trans boy couldn't go to his prom because he didn't wear a dress. And so when we look at that, we look at the troubling stories of our culture, of our people, we have to also be cognizant that we're fucking fabulous, we're beautiful, we're great, and how can we not move past the trauma, but how can we work through that trauma to implement joy, to implement pride, to implement liberation? Because when we think about liberation, it doesn't need to always be sad. We can be fun. We could be dancing in the street when our mayor resigns. You know, we can rejoice when they make policy that helps us. We could come together and love our trans siblings in time of trauma as well, and understand that love, that pleasure of connection and community is something that holds us together as a staple. That camaraderie combats heteronormity. That camaraderie combats white supremacy, because outside of that we can exist. Outside of that we can be pleasurable. And to me, that's what it means. You know, I'm not trans people aren't monolithic, but that's how I want to answer that.
And I think for the rest of us, it is how do we share space? How do we bring trans folks into our hearts and into our families? How do we show up and show love for the trans people that we do love? Because every time that all the work that we do, yes, it's about trans liberation, but on a granular fractal level, it's actually just about making the people, the trans folks in our lives, making their lives a little bit easier, and making sure that every single day is a little bit easier for them to exist in the way that who they are. And that, I think, is the question for the rest of us, is not just what is trans pleasure, because that, you know, Maxie just said it, no one's a monolith. But I think for the rest of us, it's the question of how are we in service to trans pleasure?
Showing up. Just showing up, right? Just showing up. I hear that. Like we're supposed to do with people and friends and family. We show the fuck up.
How are you to work to get that check? You show up for your people to get that liberation.
Yeah.
Period. Our last question is, how do we get folks who don't know or understand the vastness of sex work looks like to understand the vastness of what sex work is?
How do you folks do? I just share. Literally, like, get in the Insta stories. I'll break it down. You know what I mean? Like, just, it's like, it's removing the shame to show, like, this is what this looks like for me. I was on an app all day yesterday and this morning breaking down, because there were so many false statements about sex work. Like, for one, oh, sex work is like, you don't have any money, or you're just lazy, and so you want to do something that's easy. I almost want, like, delete the chat, shut it down. Nothing is easy about this space, right? But of course, that's this misconception that they have. Like, I mean, just because you selling your shit for free, you know what I'm saying, don't mean that over here it's easy, right? So I'm just showing what that looks like, and how we're carrying multiple hats in our job, in our workplace. Like, I'm the photographer, I'm the director, I'm the stylist, I'm the creative director. Like, matter of fact, I'm everything. I'm the gopher, I'm the runner, right? So it's just showing what all that looks like, what the process is. This is the work, and then also showing, like, what advocating looks like. The fact that I'm having to fight biases and misconceptions and shame in this space as well. Like, and then how the homies are hurting about it too. Just putting it out there and not being ashamed about it. If we can all start taking off this veil of shame, then it'll no longer leave room for people to be, misperceiving that space.
Yeah, sex workers aren't shy. Like, I think if you have someone who really wants to understand the vastness of sex work, like, you got Twitter, you got the sex work section of your local bookstore. There's a lot of people that are willing to tell their stories and willing to tell complex stories. And so I think understanding that there is a vastness is a step for a lot of people, is saying, this isn't a monolithic experience, even for individuals within the course of their own experience of sex work. I know so many people, we talk about how engagement in sex work is a constellation of experiences. It is a non-linear combination of choice, of circumstance, of coercion. And I know a lot of people who have had every single one of those experiences happen to them, and they do not negate other experiences, even within their experience of working. And so I think first and foremost, just sharing with people, there's a lot of voices out there that have a lot of different experiences, and they're very willing to share their stories, and they're very willing to create sex worker-led media. You just have to go and seek and find it. And I know this isn't kind of what was being asked, but I do want to say, when we advocate for sex work and for the issues around sex, one of the things that I think is always incredibly important is reminding people that your feelings about trading sex are yours and they're personal. And I never go into advocacy work asking someone to change their own feelings about their engagement in sex work. But I also remind them that that's not what we're talking about right now. If you don't want to experience sex work, because for you it would be a singular experience of harm, of coercion, of something you don't want to do, then don't do it. But what we're talking about is not someone's individual feelings, and we're not trying to change that. What we're trying to do is say the way that you impact other people who are trading sex is important and needs to recognize the health and the wellness and the well-being, including the emotional and the psychological well-being of sex workers. And so,
listen,
yeah.
Go ahead, my bad. I'm sorry. I got caught. I was like, I wanted to amen you because I was like, the vastness, the fact that sex workers need therapy, that we should have the resources to have therapy and not have the biases with therapists, right? Like, I was like, how did we leave that out?
And not have therapists that are going to shame us for what we do. We don't need nobody shame us. Now, this conversation, I think there's so much that can be said, and I want our audience members to stay tuned in and stay focused on the work that you are doing. So if we can just show folks how they can get connected with you, follow you, figure out what you're doing next, I would love to know.
Well, you can, there it is right there. Bam, here we go. So at Miss Wright's Way, where you can find everything. I have all links linked in my bio. And then here is my OnlyFans. So it's just currently the only subscription platform I have in which I am a sex worker on there. Would love for all of you guys to come and have pleasure with me and experience a very intimate, sensual experience. Yeah, all of that. As well as talk. Like I talk about that, like what my life looks like. Like I'm still talking about motherhood in this space, how I'm still having to show up, how I'm having to still take, I have a skincare business, Affirm Skincare, how I'm doing that and still trying to find the time to beat my meat. You know what I'm saying? Like there's all of that. I would love to share with you and create these intimate spaces to have healthy attachments and how you view not only me, but yourself and sex workers as a whole. So.
And I am on Twitter. I am not as fun. I talk a lot about policy. I try to break down new laws that are being introduced. I try to highlight advocacy campaigns that are happening across the country in different areas of the industry. Yes, decriminalization, but also try to uplift what's going on with dancers and strippers and the labor rights, the issues that they're facing, porn performers, cam performers. And so that's, if you want to follow me on there, that's a lot of what you're going to find. If you want to track me down in my email, please go to reframehealthandjustice.com. Oh, I also have been complaining a lot about your senator because he's terrible. So if you want to find out that Josh Hawley is a fake lawyer, you should also follow me on Twitter.
I'd like to plug Soldiers of Pole on Instagram. It is Soldiers of Pole. A lot of my close friends are a part of that. I would love for you guys, when you brought up strippers in this space, like, please go support your dancers, your exotic entertainers. I was like, they are out here and they need the support. So please check out Soldiers of Pole, donate. We are out here trying to take care of each other. So please, I had to drop that in there for them.
From the polls to the polls, we got to get this liberation started. From the polls to the polls. Well, I want to thank you, Kate, and I want to thank you, Ashley. This was so engaging, and I really appreciate you. Hopefully, we can have more conversations in the future talking about this, because I just want to pick your brains like a primate picking. Never mind. But thank you so much for joining us, and I hope to stay in connection with you both.
I'm definitely need a tutorial on how quickly you beat that face.
quick.
Listen.
I'll tell you that off camera. You know, you can't give them the goods for free. But thank you both for coming on and just sharing so much knowledge. It's so appreciated. And then next up we have Indigo. Indigo.
Hello.
There you are. Hi. Welcome back.
Hello. It is good to be here again. Are we doing another video?
Yeah, you have a special video for us.
Yes.
Right?
I think this one is featuring one of our fantastic local sex workers and Mojo organizers extraordinaire, Miani. So we should go send a spotlight onto Miani.
Let's go watch it.
There is no way that transgender women should be killed for doing sex work. There's no way that anybody should be killed for doing sex work. We all should be able to do our sex work and live amongst everyone in peace. No one should be able to judge us or anything like that. Just be you, do you. I haven't really had a lot of encounters with police, but the ones that I have, they prejudge you before they even know who you are or what the incident is, as long as you're just a sex worker, so it really doesn't matter, or you're just at the bottom of the totem pole, or it's not as urgent because you are a sex worker.
A lot of the LGBTQ plus movement to end injustice has been focused on kind of the respectable stuff, the office work, just applying for any job, and we know that some people don't even get jobs. To focus on sex work means to really bring those in the margins to the front of this conversation.
Hi, Jay Marie, you're back. No one told me I would get to see you twice in a day.
I do my best. I like to be surprising, pop up, swerve you didn't expect,
No, that's what you're doing. Dropping that Instagram hashtag.
Not everybody. It was an inside joke for the screen. It's no longer my Instagram name. If you want to find me on Instagram, it's J Marie is Holy. We can talk about that in a minute. But Maxie, holler. I'm just saying, holler to everybody who just did that conversation. I know I'm still reeling. I barely have my thoughts together because I was just in such a listening mode. So thank you for that amazing conversation.
Yeah, thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Of course. Indigo, I don't know. Do you have a favorite part?
I mean, I just, the thing that really sent me was the comment I think Kate made about how we treat people who provide care labor terribly. And I feel like between COVID, between all that sex workers have been through in the past few years with Sesta Fosta, and us screaming out for just a little whiff of support, that that is something that I never really named, but it's so true, and this is the time we gotta start changing that. How about you, Jamie?
That was definitely one of my favorite parts. It's definitely hard to choose, truly. I asked you that question very unprepared for myself. But I think, my favorite part was, I think Ashley talking about how getting people just confident to talk about sex work is really an extension of just our comfort with pleasure and how we get people comfortable talking about that. It's not really any one policy or any one cultural kind of effort that's going to do it. It's we just got to be good on our own, personally able to kind of discuss it, recognize where we fit into it, and not project, and just really be in conversation with people who not only are engaging in sex work, but also are comfortable talking about it, at minimum, which I think is kind of the bedrock of our coalition, right? It's not everybody in the group is a sex worker. Not everybody in the group has done sex work, but what is shared among us is a commitment to being honest about what we enjoy doing and what our pleasure feels like for us. Our meetings are full of pleasure. The report is pleasurable to look at, right? We are not shy about it. And so I just appreciate that about this work.
Yes. I think what Ashley said too about despite everything that's going on in this world, to still be able to say, you know what? And even though there's all this going on, I'm still going to feel good. I feel like that is a big cornerstone of our coalition. And gosh, these national guests are just putting words to all the things that we have been experiencing and just framing this end of the 10 days so beautifully. So gosh, I'm just so thankful for them and for everyone being a part of this tonight.
Me too. I mean, I'm grateful to you, Indigo. You are a heck of a co-lead, so thank you. I just wanted to take a second before we have Maxie come back and close us out. I wanted to shout out not only the coalition, but give people a very clear, some screenshots, some different images that you can keep in your mind, some kind of action steps, right? One of which is to please go to mojojustice.com and read this beautiful, beautiful State of the Hustle report. Mojojustice.com is a rich place. It's a very simple website, but we built it for you to have incredible access. We're even building it out to be more of a feature space for the coalition work. We have past education events we have recordings of. We have, the prosecutor candidate at the time, but now the prosecutor, Kim Gardner, committing to decriminalizing sex work in St. Louis. We have the video, right, from our history, from our education events. So those are going to be put up on the website soon. But first, please go look at this incredible report. Shout out to, Zach Kilgis, who I sometimes refer to as his Instagram handle, Zachary Lorenzo. Also great to follow him. He's incredible. He and I together really put the finishing touches on this report, but his graphic design vision and the photography, Luke Austin is the photographer who took this photo of a musician named Miss Pussy. So, she's not a worker, but she wanted to make sure. She was like, absolutely, I'm down to be on the cover. Just make sure folks know that I support sex workers 100%, even though I haven't had to do it myself. So we just are definitely grateful for everybody whose hands, eyes, hearts went into this creation, and we want people to read it. We want people to learn and dig in. So that's just one of the main things I want to plug. Anything you want to plug for the coalition, Indigo?
Well, the site and the report, obviously, but one thing that I want to plug for any sex workers, especially Missouri sex workers that are watching this evening or afternoon, wherever you're at, is that we are going to be rolling out the Sex Worker Caucus. We actually have started to do that, building this infrastructure for sex workers to be able to share mutual aid, be it skill shares, financial resources, the lingerie that you ordered 2 sizes too big and you need to share some love to some other workers out in your community. We want to make this a resource for that, but also a resource where we can talk about our issues. And we can also, uplift that up to the coalition and be like, hey, we need some more help with this. And so that, the folks that are not sex workers, but are trying to do right by us, can get that direction, that we can mobilize them to do the things that we might not have enough capital, enough bodies, enough time. I mean, the hustle never stops for sex workers. So as much as we can do to kind of support ourselves so that others can help support us too. So if you're interested in that, take the Pleasure Pledge, plug in so that we can get in touch with you and get you hooked into our spaces. So we can, share the love with you. And along with that, we're doing a lot of exciting things with Mojo in the upcoming year. We're going to be trying to do more harm reduction, increase our street presence, continue to connect with our local legal defense resources and other harm reduction and outreach groups. And I know, Jay Marie, you have some exciting plans for the year, some projects that you're looking forward to building on as well.
Yeah, we're gonna keep most of them quiet because essentially we want to use the momentum of this time to not only also take a chance to rest, but to really check in with the coalition and say, what do we have the capacity to do? It's going to be a whole new year, same old quarantine. So we got to figure out what exactly we want to, do. And so I wanted to just make sure that people have this link. You can find it on our website, but if you're watching right now and you just cannot wait to get next up, you want to know what's up, you want to get on the email list, you want to have a one-on-one, which is, just a chance for us to talk with you and to find out more about you and to learn how to get you involved. Please go to bit.ly/MoSexWork. That is a place where you can get plugged in on the inside. You can say, I'm down to come to a meeting. I'm down to put some labor into this. We need y'all. We want to be doing this work with you. And there is nothing you need to know ahead of time, except that we, want to give love and support sex workers. Maybe you are a sex worker. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're thinking about it. But regardless, you are down to make sure that people are safe, and you're down to do your best to center pleasure and to be, unapologetic about who you are going to be loving along the way to this new world. So that's really the main things. I know Maxie was going to come, bring us back to close us out. And I'm very grateful to everybody for tuning in. Maxie for being an incredible host. I think we have some other folks to thank, but Maxie, welcome back and take us home.
Yeah. This was such a great event, and it's sad that it's closing time and that song is just going in my head right now as this helicopter flies over.
Right.
It's a loud helicopter.
It happens. Thank you to everybody watching. That's the first thing we could say. Just
yeah.
To have y'all in the comments. Y'all was lit on Facebook, YouTube. Just thank you all for tuning in. Please send this to a friend. It will be up in the future. We can't wait to plug in with you, to have you plug in with us, and just to keep this work moving. Who else we got to thank, Maxie?
We got to thank Zach and Miles, the tech and graphics team. Every single trans person that ever lived in the world, even if you never came out, you are valid, you are appreciated, and you are part of this movement. And your stories help us get to where we are. True. Everyone who agrees with us, and all those people that have yet to agree with us because you have not understood the gospel of the hoe yet.
You're going to learn. You know what I'm saying? We're going to deliver you.
We're going to take you to sexy church, and you're going to be delivered.
Period.
Who else should I thank? I'm going to thank you, the ACLU, Mojo Justice.
Yeah.
We got to thank Wyatt. We got to thank Indigo. We got to thank everybody. I'm gonna run out of names.
We got to thank Fern Galindo, who was a researcher for this beautiful report. Could not have done this without them. Could not have done this without their dealing with the law enforcement that did not respond to the inquiries we put out. They were such an incredible contribution, and they are an incredible contribution to the coalition still. So definitely shout out to Fern, the coalition. Shout out to everybody in the coalition watching. You know what I'm saying? We love y'all. We could not have done any of this without you. And it's the gang is strong. The team is strong. That's all I know. And if you want to know more about this merch, fill out the form. Find out where you can get it. We're not selling it just yet, but if there's an inquiry out there, we might just find a way to print some more. But yeah, shout out to Fetch. Kansas City, Missouri, that had this design on a sign out front, which is where one of our teammates works. And so we just had a exchange of beautiful creativity, and we got these, these little cute little hoodies. So we got t-shirts also. Jalissa was wearing her t-shirt. Maxie, I just want to thank you again. And I feel like we're really in the home stretch. I want to thank the interpreter, JJ. Incredible. Thank you.
So great. I'm just looking at learning new words in ASL because of you, and it's just, thank you for being here.
Thank you to everybody for being patient with our, learning how to add ASL, add captioning. These services, pandemic time has been a wild place to learn new things, but thank you to everybody who has taught us along the way. We can't wait to have more accessibility pieces and moments acknowledged and just embedded in our work, right? Because our 10th demand, which is today, we had 10 demands. This is the final day of 10 days of trans demands. The 10th demand is meet all workers' access needs, right? People don't think about workers being deaf or blind or needing access, maybe needing depression and anxiety medication. There's all kinds of access points that we can open up to people. And part of knowing that workers are full people is making sure that their access needs are taken care of, right? And so just shout out to those who have been patient with us. Excited to see who comes in because their needs have been met. We know we have some hard of hearing folks and deaf folks in the group and loved ones in the group. So just really grateful for their patience and excited to learn more, excited to embed it deeper and deeper in our work.
What you said, I couldn't say it better. Really, it's just I'm just internalizing all of this. I'm like, wow, we did this. I was so nervous. I was like, this, we did this. ACLU, they got, that's a legit organization, and people are watching from all over. And I was like, I hope I don't fuck this up.
You did great. We're great. I think we're all set to say goodbye though, and I just appreciate everybody for tuning in. Max, you did great. This is fantastically, wrapping up. So I think we're all set to do our last video, I believe.
Our last video, yeah.
And well, thank you to Miles. Yeah.
Thanks, Miles. Thank you all for having me. And let's have a sexier future.
10 days.
10 days.
10 days.
10 days.
10 days.
10 days.
10 Days of Trans Demands is an annual campaign from the ACLU of Missouri's Trans Justice Program. In 2020, with the disproportionate murders of trans women, some of whom may have had to do sex work to survive, it's clear that trans justice is about more than just health insurance and pronouns. It is time to face the facts and do the work to protect those in our community who engage in the essential labor of sex work.